Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rocky here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, you mentioned that this year 2025 is a Jubilee for Hope. And I wanted to back up in general because there's some basic context within those words, Jubilee of Hope, that let's break down what that actually means because this isn't the same context of hope of, wow, I hope my bet covers and, that we win the game or, I hope that I don't get overlooked for this promotion or I hope that, my timer doesn't, break while the brownies are in the oven and it becomes a steaming pile of mess. This is hope in a much more impactful way because in because it's not about a hope in other people or a hope in people's technology. And I would like to start with the essence of what is meant by hope, and then I'll also get into this concept of what is a Jubilee and what makes that special.
Yeah, the Jubilee theme for the year 2025 is Pilgrims of Hope. And that theme will be central to the Jubilee year, the various talks and events and everything else. And that has obviously two dimensions to it. One is being pilgrims, and then the second is hope. Pilgrims have a destination, and the fact that we have a destination and the belief that we will reach it is also where the hope comes in. Hope always has a direction, it's moving somewhere. And as you said, uh, it's not a hope of this world necessarily. And Pope Benedict, in his beautiful encyclical on hope, he uh, spoke about the little hopes and the great hope. And we need the little hopes. We need the hope that maybe the stock market will turn and my stocks will go up, or that there will be mercy when I seek help with my debt, or that my efforts at reconciliation will not fall on deaf ears, or that I can really work hard enough to get a degree and find a new job in life, or we need those little hopes, the hopes that can be realized in this life, that can be realized today or next week or next year. All of those little hopes are really important for us. But none of those little hopes is a guarantee. The great hope is a guarantee. The great hope is the hope that comes in Christ, his victory on the cross, and that no matter what happens in our life, and this is related to what we talked about a couple of episodes ago, is that no matter what happens in our life, no matter how bad things are, Christ is there, and he meets us in love, and he brings us through to a victory, a better life. And so there's no amount of damage that someone can do to me, or no amount of damage that I can do to myself, that makes me unreachable. While I'm in this life, I can always cry out to him. There's always a chance. And so that's the great hope. And that gives us the courage to risk and to fail, because when we set out on any of these other ventures, not all of them are going to come through. If we only ever do things that come through, we probably haven't stretched ourselves very much in life. But if we seek after anything that's meaningful, we will have many setbacks along the way. Maybe never reaching the thing that we set out for to begin with, maybe falling, failing, taking many wrong turns. But anything that's worth doing is going to require a fair amount of trial and error. And we're going to feel that more or less poignantly, depending on how much of our hearts we put on the line. And that looks a little different for everybody. Not everybody's risk uh, paradigm is the same. We're all sensitive to different kinds of pain, emotional pain. So all of us set out towards something. Anything meaningful we take the risk for is going to have some experience of failure. Why would we ever do this? Well, because even if the whole thing fails, the very effort itself was a pilgrimage of hope, that hope that doesn't end in this life, but that ends in eternity, that doesn't end in some accomplishment or some relief of pain or suffering, or but really ends in the embrace of eternal love, that where there can be no more separation, no more death, mourning, loss, and pain, but where there is only God who is love. So that's the ultimate fallback, the ultimate backup plan, the ultimate guarantee that gives us the courage to risk what we have, because we trust that there will be a lasting hope. And so, as we set out in this Jubilee year, we are setting out as pilgrims. Pilgrims are going on a path that's uncomfortable. We're leaving what is familiar. We're taking a risk to discover and experience something that's new. And so we're invited to set out in a new way. As pilgrims, we often go in packs. A lot of times we have pilgrimages where there are other pilgrims along the way, and that communal support, mutual support, is important, and helps us to endure the trials and overcome some of the difficulties. And then we're setting out towards that hope that doesn't disappoint, a hope that is ultimately found only in Christ. And we draw closer to him during this year. And a primary thing for Jubilees has been to the events that take place in Rome. And there are a number of Jubilees for particular groups that will take place in Rome over the coming year, for young people, for elderly, for priests and seminarians, for religious, for I don't know, for the suffering, for the I'd have to. Those are the ones that are coming to me, but there are, I don't know, 20 events or something that are unfolding over the next year as specific pilgrim groups, and the Holy Father will have Mass, and there'll be certain events that are set up for them. And the whole city of Rome is massively renovated and flooded with pilgrims during the next year. And then this all gets implemented at the local diocese. Presumably, your local bishop will have some celebration, I think, and there should be events set up throughout the diocese throughout the year that mirror in some way or echo in some way the things that are happening in Rome, that your local diocese will also have particular celebrations and focus on that theme of hope. And there's something else I wanted to say, and it just left me. So, and then in general, the word Jubilee comes from the Old Testament, and it was intended to take place every 50 years. That was the case for a little bit in the church, and then they decided to make it every 25 years. We have more hope than the Jews did in the Old Testament because of Christ. So every 25 years, and the Jubilee was so the last Jubilee was the Great Jubilee 2000. Pope John Paul spent a lot of time preparing for that great Jubilee. And then he also challenged the nations of the world to do what it describes in the Old Testament, which is to forgive debts. And that was literally forgiving, just zeroing out all the ledgers and putting everybody on the same playing field again, that people wouldn't have their whole lives under the burden of a debt they could never pay off. But at least at the point of the Jubilee, they would be released and experience freedom, which is a very interesting idea that it's not clear has ever been implemented, but it would at least be a time for us to consider the debt of forgiveness that we might be holding up in our hearts. Is there someone who is indebted to us because of their misbehavior or injustice towards us, because of the ways that they've hurt us? Do we hold some debts in our hearts? And we wouldn't be absolving the debt, we would be handing it over to a greater debt collector. We would take note of how I've been hurt by somebody, what they've done to me, and then we would entrust it to the real judge, to Christ our Lord, and give him permission to be the debt collector. So could be another way of entering into the Jubilee and having hope not just for ourselves, but also for others, releasing them of our judgment over them, and handing that to the Lord.
Yeah, there's a lot to that there, and I do remember the new year, or correction, the new millennium. Is there some special doors within the Vatican that only get open during the Jubilee? Um,
Yeah, certainly the door at St. Peter. I think all the major basilicas have a door that's only opened for the Jubilee. Yeah.
I remember an image of this door being open and him being prostrate, and at the time he was very old, and was taken over by his disease that I guess ultimately took him. And I just remember there being a lot of like an emotion, because he was on the ground prostrate for a significant amount of time. From I recall having to watch it live. I was in a Catholic high school at the time, and to the part where it was like almost, at least this is me. I'm in high school, so what do I know? But to the point where it's like went from, okay, this is very reverent, to the point of like, do we need to be worried about him? Like he's not going to be able to get up. Like I remember having that thought go through me, and I guess in a small way that could be one of those little hopes. He did get up, but I look at this and really try to put the differentiation of when we say what we're putting our hope in, because we've all had many thoughts, examples, theories that we put hope in people, and it doesn't quite work out like that. Like literally, the day we are recording this is I have 20 different appointments I have to hold today. And last night, starting around 8 p.m., my son, pretty much on every half an hour dot, either threw up or woke up because of pains from him about to throwing up. So I had all of this hope for this day of it's going to be a great start the new year off. We're going to have all these new clients moving forward, to now it's not even noon yet. And it's like, I don't know if there's enough caffeine in the world for me to be able to make it to 5 o'clock. And it's like we talk about these hopes that pull us forward, and that was obviously a hope of this world, I guess is the terminology to use there. But the real hope is that goes back to, I guess, what we said in the New Year's episode, is that the steps that will take us in the right direction will be found, and that as long as you keep working, it will get there. And we have a couple of moments left, not necessarily a ton, so I don't want to go down a giant rabbit hole here. But I think that this is also, when we have this conversation of putting your hope into God, into Christ, is to look at how our daily actions can be converted that way. We all go and do various different elements of our days. Even priests are not in front of the Eucharist 24/7. You're a perfect example. You're going out, you're giving speeches, you're taking time to record this podcast. But in doing so, there's billions of people out there recording a podcast. That doesn't mean that all of them are geared towards God, subject wise or not. I mean, I've been on plenty of podcasts where it was geared towards sales or being an author or how to develop a company. And there is a healthy percentage of them that have God in the crux. He's built into the process. And there's many as well that don't, that just are here for a secular value, if you will. And I wanted to kind of let it spend this ending of this episode about how we can try to consciously change parts of our lives so that they are geared towards God and part of the greater hope, rather than the hope that, man, I just hope that this car starts today.
Well, I guess the first thing would be to notice those lesser hopes, which again are not a bad thing, and really we need them. But then to project through that towards the great hope that Christ will come, that He will come for me, that when all else fails, He will not fail, and uh, for each hope that is promised and fulfilled, that we also find a reinforcement if these little hopes, these worldly hopes, can be fulfilled, then surely the great hope, all the more so, will be fulfilled. And that helps us to keep our eyes on the cross. The cross is the sign, we could say, of the greatest failure. And in the midst of the greatest failure, the greatest victory is pulled forth. And so, even if our lives become a great failure, no matter what goes wrong, He is still there. And so, those things help us. Now, that doesn't become a form, or it shouldn't become a form of spiritual bypassing, that I don't feel the pain or really suffer the vulnerability or the loss, because I'm just saying, oh, everything's going to be fine. God's going to show up. Everything's going to be fine. Um, that is true. Everything is going to be fine and God is going to show up. But it really hurts now. And even to feel pain now is an act of hope. We couldn't feel the pain. We would have to run from it if we thought that that's all there was in life. But the very fact that we can feel it is because we know it's not the end. And so we can give ourselves permission. We can let ourselves feel the loss, the pain, the grief that comes from various things, trials, failures, losses in life. So entering into the pain, looking up to the cross, embracing the glory that comes to us in the resurrection, seeing that God can be born in the darkness of night, in the cold, in the manger, in total poverty, and that a child can be victorious against the forces of this world. All of these things are a reason for our hope.
Awesome. And that's a beautiful thought to carry with us, in that I think that looking at the explanation you just gave in conjunction with last week's episode of each step being towards the direction of Christ, whether we think it's a big step or not to us, can really end up being a massive step towards those who come after us. Or let's also be honest, a lot of us have the beam in our eye that we can't see around, and we're just stuck within our own prism, whether it be of routine or what have you, and we can't even see the good in which we're doing just by trying to do it, and let alone when those successes eventually do occur. Just moving towards it and putting, again, as you said there, the hope of Christ as the forefront of your life will guide you in the right direction. You know, this begins and ends with the image of a pilgrim. You know, the North Star says just go this way. That's what the shepherds follow. They didn't know the exact route on the road. They didn't know which river they were supposed to turn at. It was just go that way. And anyone who's traveled on foot without a GPS knows that go that way is pretty vague. There's a lot of ways to go that way that sometimes involve turning the opposite way to get around an obstacle. And when you have that shining light of Christ of just go that way, it will make a difference as long as you're willing to move and not stay stationary, but to be able to move and participate. You will be able to go and make big differences, even if it doesn't look like it necessarily in this moment in time. So have the courage to do that. Look forward in hope, and we will be with you again next week.